You have found a very special edition of the Lines podcast because it is Breeders' Cup week, and we are talking the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and the Breeders' Cup Classic on Friday and Saturday out in California. Two of the biggest, if not the biggest days in horse racing if you're in the sport, because the purses are enormous. If you're the casual fan, maybe you think the Kentucky Derby's bigger, but as far as the betting perspective goes, the Breeders' Cup is where it's at. And we found a terrific guest to join us to go through this. His name is Mike Somich. He works over with our friend Matt Brown over at VSiN. He's also part of the Racing Dudes Network, does a fantastic job handicapping horse racing throughout the calendar year. And Mike, I'm sure I can safely assume this is two of your favorite days on the horse racing calendar as well.
It is. I mean, it's just phenomenal races. You've got it's one of the few days in the U.S. that you see a bunch of international invaders. So we've got some Japanese horses coming over. They're going to be running in some of the big races. We'll talk about a couple of those in the Classic. Got a boatload of European invaders here in the turf races. They always do well. And it's the one day that you can really expect to see all the stars come out, which is my favorite part about this. Sometimes, you don't get the best betting races, but you get the best horses, and it's just fun to see them run. You can pass those races, wait for the good ones. The one thing I will say about this year, last year we had 7 favorites at 7-5 or shorter. This year, we're probably going to have 2, maybe 3. So much better betting 2 days this year. So I'm really excited about it, looking forward to it. You also have the biggest horse racing tournament of the year. If you like horse racing, you never gotten involved in tournaments, it's a phenomenal way to bet. There's about $500,000 up for grabs in the BCBC over the 2 days. So I could not be more excited to head down to Santa Anita and get to the racetrack and watch some of the best in the world compete.
I love it. In this video, we're going to touch on 2 of the biggest ones for casual horse racing fans. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile on Friday, which gives us our first peek of who might be the contenders for the 2024 Kentucky Derby, which happens to also be the 150th running of it here in my neck of the woods, Louisville, Kentucky. And then we'll also talk about the Breeders' Cup Classic on Saturday, the culmination of the entire event with a $6 million purse in that race. So it's going to be a fantastic handicapping experience, chance to find some good options here. But let's start with the Juvenile on Friday, what they call Future Stars Friday over at the Breeders' Cup. And as you will see often in the Breeders' Cup, big field of horses here, Mike. 11 horses on the card. This race coincides with the first pool of Kentucky Derby futures that are out. That's running Tuesday through Thursday. It closes right when the Breeders' Cup starts. And then you have to look at the Juvenile odds as well. So looking at this field of 11, we have a couple of favorites in here at 4-1 in Timberlake, trained by Brad Cox. He is in the 4-post. We also have Muth, trained by Bob Baffert. He is also 4-1. And then a third 4-1 shot here, another Bob Baffert horse, Prince of Monaco. He is in the 2-hole. Just your initial thoughts here on the favorites at the top of the board here for the Juvenile.
Yeah, pretty good draw for everybody in the Juvenile. I didn't think that anyone really got put behind the 8 ball when they saw the post positions come out. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the Classic because there were a couple horses that got negatively affected there. This is really an interesting race. And what I love about these 2-year-old races and even the Kentucky Derby, you kind of have to pick your circuit. You got to pick what races you thought were the best prepping up for this. And this is a great example of that. We've got Prince of Monaco, who's going to be, I believe, your post-time favorite for Bob Baffert, coming out of California. Last time we saw him was in the Del Mar Futurity. He looked phenomenal in that race, won pretty easily. The race before that, the Best Pal, he absolutely took it to Muth and was able to beat him. That was at 6 furlongs. Big question with Prince of Monaco is he has not gone 2 turns yet, so we'll see him going 2 turns for the first time on Future Stars Friday. Locked, who is your morning line favorite right now, at 7-2. Last time out was in the Breeders' Cup Futurity at Keeneland. Faced a horse called the Wine Steward, who drew the 1 post for this. 8-1 on the Wine Steward right now. The two of them had an absolute battle down the stretch. It looked like the Wine Steward had him beat, and Locked was able to come back and win. Timberlake, who you mentioned, one of the favorites, last time faced General Partner, who's also in this race. That was the Champagne up in New York. So you're really deciding, okay, do I like the Champagne more? Do I like the Breeders' Cup Futurity more? And then you've got the American Pharoah out of California at Santa Anita going 1.16 miles, the same distance we're going to see here. And that was the win for Muth and beat a horse named Wind Me Up, who's also in the field. So 3 races that have 2 contenders coming out of them, the Breeders' Cup Futurity, the Champagne, and the American Pharoah. When I'm looking at a race like this, I'm really deciding, okay, which race do I think is the best? Because all three of those races were relatively close. And if you can focus in and decide which race you think is going to run the most like this and which horses you think are the best coming out of it, it allows you to really start grouping horses together. You can throw certain horses out or certain races out, and then you can land on a horse that you really like in this spot. In my mind, I thought that the Champagne was the weakest of those three races, which is where both Timberlake and where General Partner came out of. So they're the two horses that are shorter priced that I'm not nearly as interested in. Conversely, I thought the American Pharoah was the best of the three, and that's where we got Muth beating Wind Me Up, and it was the first time Muth had gone 2 turns. So a horse that really interesting horse and kind of the path here. Sold for $2 million. So as the very, very highly touted 2-year-old coming in here, had run well going to 1 turn, but showed a completely different style going 2 turns. Needed the lead, needed to be close going 1 turn. Going 2 turns, Muth was able to sit off the pace and then make a big move around the far turn. And that's what I'm looking for when I'm trying to find a winner, is someone who has the versatility, right? They're able to show some speed, but they're also able to pass horses. Because as a 2-year-old, sometimes the toughest thing is to actually be mature and be able to pass horses. And that's something we saw from both Muth, and to his credit, Lockton and Wine Stewart both showed some maturity as well in the Breeders' Cup Futurity.
So when we're looking back at the history of this race, I don't see many Derby winners there. I mean, Nyquist a few years back, Forte was a sad scratch the week of the Derby this past year. So it's less about, to me, finding who's going to be the Kentucky Derby winner next year, and more about just finding value. Because you tell me if you disagree or not. When we're talking about 2-year-old horses here, there's very little to go by leading up to this race. So if you're just solely locked in on past results as opposed to projecting forward and where, what the upside is here, I think in this race in particular, we really should care about what the potential upside is, as opposed to being too tunnel visioned on past results at this point, right?
Yeah, it's an excellent point. I mean, a lot of these horses are doing something for the first time. I mean, I mentioned who I believe is going to be the favorite, Prince of Monaco. He's never gone 2 turns. And so you're trying something completely different, and you're never going to see that the first Saturday in May. All these horses have gone 2 turns. They've run longer, got a pretty good idea of what they can and can't do. A lot of these horses in the Juvenile, you're really deciding, okay, what angles do I want to use? One of the classic horse racing angles is second time going 2 turns, because you expect the horse the first time going 2 turns learn something. They understand they're going further. Okay, they have to shuffle per position more. They have to be able to save their energy early and then switch leads late so that they're able to really burst home. And you'll see a big time improvement second time going 2 turns. And so you're looking for specific improvement angles and who has the ability to really take a big time step forward, versus horses, like that at the Derby, or even with the class that we're going to talk about, you've got a good breadth of information there. You're not looking to project forward. You're more looking to project for that race. Okay, who's going to run their best effort on that day? And is that best effort good enough to win? We will most likely see the best career effort from whoever wins the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, right? You're going to see someone take a step forward. It may be a favorite, it may be a price, but you're going to see someone take that leap, and that's going to be your winner. So it's a little different style of handicapping with these 2-year-old races. A lot of people will look for prices in these 2-year-old races as well because of that. There's less knowns. There's more unknowns in these type of races, and so it's a good place to take a shot. I have a couple big prices I like earlier in the Thursday Stars or Friday Stars card, Future Stars card. This race I do think is going to be a little more formful. The horse that at a price I think could be a little bit interesting. I mentioned the American Pharoah, thought that was the best prep coming into this. The horse Wind Me Up, who is 15-1 on the morning line, drew the 3 posts, an absolutely phenomenal draw for him. He could be the fastest horse in this race, and sometimes when you get loose at Santa Anita, that's a problem. Right to his outside's Timberlake, who's another speed horse. Whichever one gets the lead, and I don't see a world where Timberlake gets an easy lead. I think this is either Wind Me Up gets an easy lead or Timberlake and Wind Me Up are pressing each other. If it's the first scenario and Wind Me Up gets easy lead, he becomes a problem at a big price, because he could get Brave out there second time going 2 turns.
So what did you land on? Do you think it's going to be an honest pace here? Do you think we're going to wind up in a speed duel and Wind Me Up and Timberlake sabotage each other?
I think you're going to see a pretty fast pace early here. I don't see a world where they're going to really back off. And you've got other horses. General Partner went gate to wire, or tried to go gate to wire last time. He's another one where I think you're going to see some early speed. Muth has speed, but I wouldn't expect to see it just because of what we saw last time. I think and this is interesting. You got three Bafferts in here. You've
Yeah.
got Wind Me Up, you've got Muth, and you've got the Prince of Monaco. He likes to control the pace in these races. It's what we saw the last couple years in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I don't see any world where he doesn't send Wind Me Up and just say go. Just go as fast as you want. I have Muth. I have Prince of Monaco. Both of them have the ability to sit just off the pace and close into it. I don't want a slow pace. I don't want Timberlake getting loose. I want to use some of Timberlake early by sending Wind Me Up early. So I think Wind Me Up is the horse that's going to end up in the lead. And the real question is, does anyone want to go with him? Because if they don't go with him, then he becomes ultra dangerous in this spot. I expect you're going to see General Partner and Timberlake be close to the pace, and that's going to set it up for some horses coming from off of it.
The morning line shows a pretty competitive race here, right? We have 11 horses in this race. 7 of them are single digits on the morning line, only 4 double digits. You mentioned Wind Me Up at 15-1. Then you have Noted at 20-1, and then 2 30-1 shots at Ekoro Neo and Cuban Thunder. Before I get to your picks for this race, do you have any thoughts on this Japanese invader, Ekoro Neo? Because it hasn't happened often, but we have seen at least a couple of Japanese horses come in and pull big upsets at the Breeders' Cup in recent years.
We have a couple years back, we had a 30+1 winner in the distaff, able to get the job done for Japan. And since then, we've seen Japan fare extremely well on the international circuit. They won a couple races over in the desert this summer. We're going to talk about one of those horses in the Classic next. There's actually 2 Japanese horses there. And I think that's the race where they have a significantly better shot. I'd be surprised if Iko Neo is able to do anything here. It doesn't seem like the best spot for him. And the contention runs deep here as well. And he's not really been tested. That, to me, is the other key here. Still a maiden, hasn't won a race yet, so awfully interesting spot to kind of throw that one into the deep end. Noted, I think at 20-1, a little bit interesting, but would need to take a big time step forward to be really successful in this spot. Fierceness, one horse we did not talk about, was the best debut horse at Saratoga. That horse had all the buzz in the world and just absolutely ran a dud last time out. I'll be interested to see what the price is on Fierceness. It's a Todd Pletcher trained horse. I'm not all that interested, but last time out was a heavy favorite against Timberlake and General Partner, and now you see Timberlake there at 4-1. You're getting 6-1 at Fierceness. Wouldn't be surprised if that's a horse that kind of returns to form, and we see that first race again, and is good enough to hit the board, but don't think he's going to be able to win the race, but it might be a price if he floats up at that 10-1, 12-1 range that you want to include in trifectas.
So we're recording this Tuesday morning, a lot of time between now and post time, Mike. And so I issue that caveat before I ask this question of who do you have on top right now, and might it change depending on price? Because it is the Breeders' Cup, and we have a lot of single digits here out of a field of 11. So I could see why, if a horse doubles in odds between now and post time, you'd be more interested in that horse with a bunch of 2-year-olds here. So where's your mind going right now for the top of your tickets?
This one I'm pretty decided in. This is one of those races where I think my opinion is pretty solid and pretty good, and I'm expecting to get somewhere in the 3-1 to 5-1 range on Muth, who I think is the best horse in this race. I was really impressed with that American Pharaoh effort. Being able to switch tactics, first time going 2 turns, shows a ton of maturity from a horse. And now going 2 turns for the second time, I expect Muth to get better. And I think the pace sets up beautifully here as well. I mentioned there's 3 horses that want to be prevalent early. I think he's going to be able to sit right behind those horses. I don't mind the 10 draw. Gives him enough time to get over, maybe sit in that 2 path on the first turn, make a big move on the second turn. I love the fact that he's already won over the Santa Anita track, so you know that he likes the racetrack as well. I think Muth's going to be awfully tough here, and I think you're going to get a square price on him because of the contention in this race.
Sadly, the Baffert horses are not in the Kentucky Derby futures pool because he's still suspended over at Churchill Downs. So we can't get a fat price on Muth if you want to go for the giant lottery ticket that he wins this, gets into the Derby field, because I believe it's 50 points for the winner of this if Baffert's not the trainer. So still have that hanging over the air at Churchill Downs. So appreciate it, Mike. Great pick there with Muth. We'll see if Baffert kind of spits in the face of Churchill Downs one more time here at the Breeders' Cup, and we'll move ahead. Yeah, well, I'm sure he would love it. I'm sure he would revel in that opportunity. Let's move ahead here to the Breeders' Cup Classic, the culmination of the entire event. On Saturday, it is race 9 in the program, a 6:40 p.m. Eastern time post time for this race. And we have to begin with the news of Arcangelo scratching in the 1 post was 7-2. Antonucci, phenomenal story, first female trainer to win the Belmont this year, but sadly out of the race, and that's going to change a lot here for because that was a huge contender in the Classic this year, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, depending on where you looked, you had Arcangelo as either the favorite or the co-favorite in some spots. 7-2 on the morning line was the second choice. Had a hoof issue. They're doing the right thing for the horse. It didn't seem like it was a great idea to send him out there and see what happens. So not surprised out of the race. But you mentioned, I mean, Jenna Antonucci, phenomenal story. This is a horse that won the Belmont. It was the first time a female trainer had won a classic race, a Triple Crown race. Comes back, wins the Travers at Saratoga, looked phenomenal doing it. I had a big shot here. The one post, not a great position, but considering the running style, I don't think it would have necessarily hampered Arcangelo as much as some others. So would have definitely been a contender in this race. And I think really the storyline from that is you're going to see a very short price now on Arabian Night, who's going to break out of the 12 post for Bob Baffert. It's a horse that took on older horses and was able to win the Pacific Classic last time out. 3-1 on the morning line. I think looks more like 7-5 when they break from the gate. I think you're going to see a sub 2-1 horse with Arabian Night. And really interesting classic here. Last year we had Flightline, just a generational horse. You don't have the stars here, which makes this a really, really interesting betting race. This is one of those where I could make a good case for 6, maybe 7 horses in this spot, which is kind of crazy considering I just said there's going to be a 7-5 favorite. But I mentioned that post position draw. This is one of the races where the draw really mattered, and specifically for Arabian Night, who wants to be forwardly placed, wants to be on the lead, went gate to wire last time out. Well, there's one other really, really fast horse, and that's Saudi Crown in here for Brad Cox. He breaks out of the 6th post. If Arabian Night had drawn inside of Saudi Crown, I would have liked Arabian Nights' chances to win this race a lot more. Inside speed in horse racing is incredibly important because as soon as you get to that first turn, the inside speed generally gets a break, right? Because the horse who's in second has to run 1 length outside and will generally lose a half length to a full length around the turn because they have to cover more ground. That allows that inside speed horse to slow down, get more control, and don't generally see the outside speed horse then press right away in the backstretch so the inside speed can get more comfortable. Well, the inside speed is now Saudi Crown, and Saudi Crown has one choice, that's to go, which means Arabian Night has to do something he doesn't want to do, which is stalk the pace if he wants to win this race, or he can absolutely burn it in that opening quarter mile, get to the turn first, but that makes him weak late. And so either way, it's a detriment to his chances of winning, and he's going to be a short price now with Arcangelo out. It makes this race wildly interesting from a betting perspective.
What are you doing with the Japanese horses? Because we got one here that's 4-1, and then I was going to ask you about Derma Sotogake because I remember this horse from the Derby getting all kinds of hype. Had a troubled trip in the Derby to still finish, I think, 6th. So I was like, oh, well, he must be doing something decent between now and the Derby to be in the Breeders' Cup Classic. No, this is his first race since the Kentucky Derby. So I guess 2-part question here. What are you doing with Ushba Tesoro, who's 4-1 on the morning line? And second question, what the hell is Derma Sotogake doing in this race?
I'll start with the second one. I've got no damn idea, man. Like, I have no clue how Derma Sotogake showed up here. I was shocked 'cause I thought, well, just like you, I'm like, oh, I must have missed a couple races in Japan where he won a great Group 2, was able to be successful going 2 turns. Nope. You know, we're just going to trot him out there all cold. This is like, you know, Durant coming back off the Achilles, playing 48 minutes. Nothing to see here, right? Pretty surprised to see Derma Sotogake here. A horse that I thought did run better than what most people gave him credit for in the Kentucky Derby. You mentioned not a clean trip. The horse wanted to be forwardly placed, ended up way back early, was able to kind of run up and make some ground late. So not a race where I'm going to knock him for. But man, this is a brutal spot to come back in. And we've seen this horse come back off the layoff, ran in the Saudi Derby, Group 3 over there. That was just a 2-month layoff, and he struggled. You go back to his first career race, took 3 races to break the maiden, so not a horse that's exactly run well off the bench either. So just a very surprising spot here. No interest in Derma Sotogake. If he wins, I lose, and I'm totally fine with it on Saturday. Yeah. Ushba Tesoro is a completely different story, though. You got to respect the Ushba Tesoro in this spot. One thing that I should at least mention here, he's had a lot of trouble in the gate at Santa Anita to the point where it took almost 10 minutes to load him into the gate for his workout a couple days ago. He was bucking. He was wild. He had no interest in doing it, which is surprising because what we've seen with these Japanese horses is when they travel, they actually don't have issues in the gate, because the gate in Japan, much similar to the gate in the U.S. and the gate in Saudi Arabia and in Dubai, than the European style running, where you don't have, like in Europe, you don't have anyone in the gate with them. They just load them up, they break out. There's not anyone holding on to the horse's reins. In the U.S., in the UAE, you see that. In Japan, you see that. So it's more of an easy transition for a lot of these Japanese horses to go around the world versus some of the European horses, just because of the difference in the gait. But Ushba Tesoro had a world of trouble during the warm-ups. Now, will that happen on Saturday? I don't know. And it's not something that's happened to him generally on race days. But you also have to realize this is going to be a massive crowd, ton of noise. The Classic breaks right in front of the front stretch, right? So all the fans are going to be right there. So we'll see how he takes the conditions. If he does, look out. I mean, this is one of those races where I'm dreading you to ask me who I'm going to pick on top, because I could legitimately pick 3 or 4 horses here. Ushba Tesoro is one of them. He is that good. And when you look back through his past performances, he's left Japan for 3 races. He won all 3 of them, and he beat some pretty good fields, and he did so without needing the lead, which is a big thing here in this spot. He has the perfect style to run in this race on Saturday. I don't, because you have Saudi Crown, because you have Arabian Night, you're guaranteed a quick pace. Mm-hmm. Having a horse that can sit in 4th or 5th and has a huge kick is exactly what you want. And guess what? That's Ushba Tesoro. If we didn't have these gate issues in the morning, I'd probably land there. I think 4-1 is a pretty fair price. I think you're going to get every bit of it because of the amount of money that's coming in on Arabian Night in my mind on Saturday. So he's one of those where I'm going to be watching very, very closely in the warm-up, in the load. Does he look like he's comfortable? And if he does, he's someone I'll probably have a win bet on.
Any other horses in the double-digit morning line range that we haven't talked about that you feel like we should?
If you're a trifecta player, I think there's 3 horses that are relevant for you here. Bright Future, the 11 horse. It's a 3-year-old for Todd Pletcher. I thought this horse had a legit chance to win the mile. They chose to go to the Classic because of what they think of this horse. They must expect him to have a bright future, aptly named here. Considering what he's done, you can't really knock it either. He won his last 2 races. One was an allowance at Saratoga, came back and jumped up, took on Older, and won the Jockey Club Gold Cup. I'm sorry, this is a 4-year-old versus 4-year-olds, and was able to beat Proxy, who this race is a pretty big number, but this is another one that has that tactical speed. Was able to sit second in both of those races and make a run. The pace in both those races a little bit slower, so he's going to be further from the pace, trying something new. The 11 post, a little bit of a concern considering what the style I expect, but because you got those 2 speed horses, I think he should be able to kind of follow Arabian Night and then try and tuck in on the rail. If he's able to get rail position into that first turn, I think Bright Future is dangerous at 10-1. And then the 2 horses inside to him, Dreamlike, who drew the 10 post here, 30-1 on the morning line, has to be a player in your trifectas, because last time out at Parks, runs a career best race, ends up running second to Saudi Crown. Saudi Crown had everything his own way that day. An absolutely loose lead, went 1:37.4 to the mile. That is ridiculously slow. They're going to go like 4 seconds, 3 seconds faster than that on Saturday to the mile. So he's going to have a completely different pace to chase, and he wants to come from off the pace. So Dreamlike, I think, at 30-1, interesting horse in your trifectas. And same with Senor Buscador, the 9 horse. It's a horse that's just been getting better and better all season. He's run well in the California races leading up to this. Won the San Diego handicap when the pace kind of collapsed. He's going to get that same pace collapse. And he ran 4th behind Arabian Night, who's going to be your short favorite, and Go Rocket Ride, who would have been, in my mind, the second choice in this race. He's scratched out. He's only 2 lengths behind. And if you're within 2 lengths of Arabian Night in this race, and Arabian Night goes off at 7-5, you probably shouldn't be 30-1.
Fair point. All right, I'm going to put your feet to the fire. Who is your win bet? And what's your favorite way to play an exotic wager here for the Classic?
You know, I am between Arabian Night, Dreamlike, Ushba Tesoro, and then I have a little love for White Abaro. Haven't talked about him. He won the Whitney at Saratoga last time. Seems to be coming into form, but he's never really been able to compete when the big bright lights are on. The Whitney was a phenomenal win, but this is a better field than that Whitney field was. I'm going to go with Ushba Tesoro on top right now. I believe the talent is there. We've never seen this gate problem before. So I'm going to write that off as a one-off and say, okay, he figures this out before Saturday. And if he does, I think that setup, which I talked about earlier, is so key here. You've got all the talent in the world, and the setup is perfect for this horse. I think Arabian Night's the best horse in this field. I cannot take sub 2-1 on that horse with this position, with that draw, with the pressure he's going to take early from Saudi Crown. So I'll take a little bit of a shot with Ushba Tesoro, but I wouldn't talk anyone off a win bet on Bright Future at 10-1 either. I think he's the other one that you got to take a peek at a bigger price.
You know, the vibes are good here because I remember you were on Mage in the Kentucky Derby, and I'm sitting there watching with my family, and my mother-in-law asked me, oh, Mage is jumping up and down before the starting gate. I'm like, yeah, that can't be good. And sure enough, Mage just comes running down at the end and wins the Derby. So maybe Ushba Tesoro's jumping around behind the gate, and it won't matter for the Classic as well here. The good little synergy there, Mike.
Hey, let's take it. That Mage call was a phenomenal one. That was a fun day. That was, anytime you hit the 15-1 winner in the Derby, and you had the horse pegged before, and you have a nice little daily double, you get to have a little extra champagne that night.
Love it, love it, Mike. Before we get out of here, let people know where they can find you, where they can find your horse racing work as well.
Yeah, of course. So check me out on VSiN. I'm on Lombardi Line on Thursday, Sharp Money on Friday. Then I host The Handle both Saturday and Sunday. If you're an NFL bettor, the Sunday last hour from 5 to 6 Pacific, 9 to 10 Eastern is the best hour of content we put out there. It's all the future prices. So we look a week ahead on the lines. We talk about what games we are betting in real time so that we get the best of the number. We've had phenomenal luck since the season started there. So check out The Handle, 4 to 7 Pacific, 7 to 10 Eastern on VSiN. You can check it out on Roku TV or on YouTube TV as well. And then racingdudes.com for everything you need from a horse racing perspective. They provide a free pick every race, every day. I do a podcast every Monday and Thursday called The Magic Mike Show. So we did a nice little Breeders' Cup draft. So if you want to jump in the Breeders' Cup as a whole, check that out. We did that yesterday, so a ton of information there. If you're playing the card, we'll be live Thursday and Friday from California, from Arcadia. We got a nice little Airbnb for the racing dudes there, so we'll be talking about the next day's races both Thursday night and Friday night over on YouTube. You can find that at youtube.com/racingdudes. It's a phenomenal time for horse racing. Love talking about it. One of my favorite weeks of the year. Can't wait to get to Santa Anita and get these things going.
And on Twitter at Samobomb18 for Mr. Mike Somich. Mike, I once went to Japan. I learned that they say cheers by saying kanpai in Japan.
Yes, sir.
So Ushba Tesoro wins the Classic. I will be kanpai to you through the Twitter DMs on Saturday night. Should be a fun one, man, with the Japanese invader in the richest race in the country this year. So thank you again for joining us. For the rest of you, be sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button. Let us know in the comments who you are betting on, not only in these two races for the Juvenile and the Classic, but any others that you like in the Breeders' Cup as well. Best of luck and enjoy the horse racing.